Welcome to the Joanne Avison podcast. Across this series, we've been exploring fascia not as a structure, but as a living field. You might consider it a field of relationship or relatedness. We began by looking at fascia as an emotional archive shaped over time by lived experience rather than isolated events. And we then explored bioemotional intelligence and how the body senses and responds and reorganises itself through subtle perception. And from there, we moved into the energetic body, not as something abstract or esoteric necessarily, but as the felt experience and the moment-to-moment expression of continuity, of organisation, of coherence, always unique to each of us. And most recently, we explored sacred geometry in this series as the blueprint through which all of that organisation and unique expression takes shape in living tissue. So today, we're going to bring all of that into looking at the nervous system. Generally speaking, the nervous system is where explanations are found for feeling, for sensing, for activating the body, animating the body. However, there is a fundamental error in the classical view, especially when it's portrayed as a sort of a partner system to the fascial system. Stay with me. Note this, don't forget this. Fascia is not a system. Fascia is the architecture of all the systems. It's not a sister system to the nervous system. The nerves are arguably made of it. So all the so-called systems of the body are integrated, interconnected, and formed by, in, and as an essential aspect of the fascia matrix, or we could call it the living fascial architecture, the weave in which the fabric of our form self-organises. Here we're considering the nervous system not as a separate system, not as a controller, but as something that lives within the same fascial field we've been exploring all along. It has brilliant, necessary and foundational tasks. It essentially orchestrates much of what we do, and it plays a huge role in the body. However, it has been classified as if it activates movements through a biomechanical function based on a similar theme to like a wiring diagram that makes a machine work. The nervous system does not experience the body as if it is operating separately or from outside. It doesn't even necessarily initiate sensation because it's preempted by the nature of our living architecture that filters to and from it. It's much bigger than we thought. The nervous system experiences the body from within the architecture of the fascial matrix in profound relationship with it. So what do I mean by that? The nervous system is often described as if it were a command centre, issuing instructions that the body then carries out, or receiving instructions from the outside world that it reacts to. But human lived experience tells a much more nuanced story. The nervous system is not necessarily an initiator. It is also, as well, more of a listener. It's constantly sensing the sensory organisation and the hierarchy of that organisation. It listens to what the body is experiencing moment by moment. It listens and responds to the proprioceptive awareness that resides in the architecture itself, responding to pressure, to support, to continuity, to fluidity, to strain, to ease, to rhythm, to movement, to internal motility. It's a whole orchestra. Much of what it listens to comes through fascia, and research suggests that there is an exquisitely refined and subtle interface between this architecture and that of the neural net residing in it. So regulation is not something the nervous system imposes on the body. It is something that emerges through its relationships with the body, through how the body feels to itself or self-senses. And that self-sensing sense is proprioception. It literally means one's own self-perception. We often speak about safety psychologically, but safety is not primarily a concept. First and foremost, safety is more of a bodily experience or a physical sensation. It's many things, and it's very hard to describe, including the feeling that effort is proportionate. Support is available. Continuity has not been lost. It's almost a feeling of absence in the sense of no concern, rather just a deep inner palpable awareness of possibility and presence. And when the fascial system feels organised and balanced enough to distribute the forces of any load and share and transmit them throughout the body appropriately, then the nervous system interprets that as safety. When fascia feels fragmented, braced, overloaded, the overexerted sensations alert the nervous system, even if nothing outwardly, obviously, appears wrong. And this is why someone can intellectually think they're safe and still feel instinctively unsettled. The nervous system is not always responding to obvious logic. It is responding to a deep inner organisation and self-awareness. So what that means is that when people describe stress or overwhelm or anxiety, they often use spatial language. For example, I feel scattered, or I feel pulled in different directions, or I don't feel fully here, I'm beside myself. These are not always metaphors. They're actually descriptions of how the body's organised and organising itself in response to something. So under prolonged inappropriate stress, the fascia can transmit forces with dissonance rather than resonance. It's as if the fascial tone becomes uneven. And that is literally translated into the structure as uneven or inappropriate force transmission, like clenching, panicking. And in a given circumstance, such as fatigue, for example, we might step awkwardly or lose our spring, and some regions over the body carry a disproportionate load or experience an unexpected overload. And in a moment like that, we often gasp. The breath loses continuity. Movement becomes segmented. The body no longer feels like a coherent whole. And there is a subtle sense of discontinuity or dissonance. You might be cross with yourself, and this can give signals to the nervous system that there's a loss of continuity. It's very rapid, happens in nanoseconds. But the nervous system can then treat that as a threat, not because obvious danger is present, but because internal support no longer feels smooth, reliable, regulated, as if the rhythm is somehow out. It doesn't have to feel smooth necessarily, but it isn't rhythmical. It's arrhythmic, it's dissonant. And because of this deeper architectural response that precedes the nervous system signal, it attempts to regulate through controlling, but attempts to regulate the body through controlling can backfire. We can attempt to control, we can try to relax the body, we can try to think our way into calm. And sometimes these help, and often they don't. That's because regulation is not something the nervous system does to the body. Regulation is something that emerges when the body feels senses supported enough to change state. Sometimes seeking overall control can inhibit activation, and a deeper remembering of our natural organisation can allow resolution. For example, when we can find our way back to the breath, breathing quietly, despite what we might be thinking, we can begin to bring ourselves back to an inner sense of safety, especially if we've practiced that in the meantime when there was nothing to worry about, when nothing had happened, if that makes sense. Indeed, it can become more of the norm for us to breathe ourselves into presence just because we've been doing it. And just doing some of the super simple practices that we've presented throughout this series, you can find that they'll accumulate for no reason. And then one day you seek to restore that natural rhythm of allostasis, and the breath itself reminds the body. The breath itself informs the nervous system. The breath itself encourages it to respond parasympathetically rather than by overreacting. It's such a powerful resource for presence. And one of the most important distinctions here is between extraneous or extra, meaning unnecessary, tension and tone. So extraneous tension implies holding, bracing or effort, even just to hold. Just see if you could let go of your shoulders a little or your jaw. Could you perhaps be holding them a little tighter than they need to be? Now, tone is more subtle. Tone describes readiness and responsiveness and choice. It is ready to respond without being wired to react. So a body with healthy tone, which is held in its fascial architecture essentially, is not limp, but it's not rigid either. It can meet demand and then release the forces it needed to transmit that meeting of a demand. So essentially, it can rebound and recoil, something like a spring. And fascia plays a very central role in this because it modulates tone across the whole architecture rather than in isolated parts, as we sometimes think. It facilitates something called energy storage capacity, which is in fact free metabolic energy. And it's also known as elasticity or spring loading. It's super valuable, and the body instinctively senses when it's available because it's part of our biological blueprint. So when tone is appropriate, the nervous system senses capacity and competence and choice. It senses that the body can respond if needed. And strangely, there is even a sense that there's time to choose the optimum response. That sensing is regulation or self-regulation. That sense of ease is relaxation. And even if you're moving, you can move in a more relaxed manner. And for some people, acting calm means keeping still. But keeping still isn't quite the same as feeling stillness or presence. Keeping still can mean be static, which in a more blocked and resistant rather than natural and relaxed manner. For them, in this situation, attempts to relax can actually increase discomfort. It's as if letting go emotionally of their guard would make them more vulnerable. And in that situation, even slowing down can feel kind of exposing. And it's as if being in one place rather than moving around frenetically feels destabilizing. And this is when the fascial architecture responds well to micro movements. It turns down the volume on the mind chat concerns and gently reduces vigilance. And over time, it can create resilience that becomes the key. Resilience doesn't come from forcing calm. It comes from gradually restoring organisation so that calm becomes a possible or feasible option. And we sometimes hear the phrase peace of mind. And for sure, there are ways of calming the mind. However, this is not all a mind-based process. It's not an intellectual process. The fascial architecture loves micro motion. And if we can become a little more self-aware and bring our awareness into present time by breathing it and by listening to our bodies as a sensory feedback matrix, we can expand into a new quality of tone. So it's like a pathway to that is the micro movements done in a particular way. And it's a listening to part of us that is beyond mind, the spirit of us, which is honouring our beingness regardless, and through which the breath can regulate the motion. And we can find this balance in motion, this allostasis, this bioemotional intelligence. And the word respiration is often related to respiriting. In many languages, breath and spirit are in fact the same word, and it is what animates our form. So it's a brilliant segue into the micro movements, which give a brilliant facility to natural calm. And fatigue and burnout are often framed as emotional or psychological states, but they can also be states of repeated fascial overload. The fascia, as we've said, has an extremely intelligent role that even if it's overridden, it seems to keep the score. So when tissue's been carrying disproportionate strain for too long, the systems within the matrix gradually lose their respective abilities to adapt and seamlessly uphold their roles within this exquisitely complex architecture. And once the nervous system senses this loss of capacity or freedom, it reduces output. It acts as a protective measure. Now, rest alone doesn't always resolve this. It's part of it, but what is often needed is reorganisation over appropriate time. That is redistribution of load, restoration of continuity, a gradual rebuilding of trust within the system, and remembering that it is born to move and move well, and not necessarily perform huge exercises that make no sense of fascia and treat the body as if it's a linear biomechanical machine or as if it's got to perform. This is why recovery is rarely instantaneous, and why progress and process are never, ever linear. We are non-linear biologic forms. And resilience is often described as a kind of toughness. But in living systems, resilience looks much more like adaptability and intelligent adaptation, being able to let go and not act when it's not appropriate, or be still when you choose. And the ability to reorganise under pressure without losing coherence, the ability to reorganise over time appropriately to the time, the place, the ongoing situation, which includes the internal emotional state as well as the external environment. So we can soften without collapsing. We can be firm but without hardening. It's the ability to move between states without getting stuck, and to adapt rather than become static in identity or physical position. So fascia is the tissue that makes all this moment-to-moment adaptation possible. It allows forces to distribute on multiple levels in multi-dimensional geometries. It allows movement to travel through the form and harnesses the moving energy as a resource in motion. It allows local effort to be held by the global support of the field, and it facilitates global allostasis with local integrity. And when that happens, no single part has to carry everything alone. And that shared, distributed support is what resilience feels like in and throughout the body. That's what it means to relax. It's that tone that we might call harmony or resonance, when we are able to respond appropriately and move through time in good time for us at the time. Truthfully, from our earliest moments, we organise and regulate our fascial matrix through relationship, through touch, through holding, through rhythm. Think of a mother rocking a baby to sleep. Through shared movement and presence, and through energy in motion or emotional responses. We do not tend to self-regulate well in isolation. That's a developmental truth that seems deep to all studies of humans. And as adults, we continue to regulate through relationship, including our relationship with our own bodies, ourselves, with our inner awareness. And fascia is in fact central to this, literally, symbolically, and archetypally. It's how support is felt through our architecture, how steadiness and presence are experienced, expressed, and how continuity is restored. It's already there. How the nervous system learns that it doesn't have to stay on guard, however that's manifest through the digestive system or any other system of the body. In my clinical experience, it can express through many different systems. And as I said at the beginning, it's unique to each of us. Ironically, that's what makes us all the same. Every one of us is unique. And movement plays a crucial role here, of course, but not in the context of, as I said earlier, big exercise or performance necessarily. That can be included. Movement becomes regulatory when it restores that inner balanced relationship within the body. What I mean by that is that when force can distribute readily, and it's this natural blueprint of our tissue, our spring-loaded elastic recoil is restored. And that automatically happens when regions that have felt as if they've been working in isolation kind of reconnect, and the sensations join the dots, the sensations of being in relationship. So fascia responds to slow, attentive movements by reorganizing itself, and it also responds to micro movements at varying speeds. And over time, that particular kind of reorganization in small sound bites is felt by the nervous system as a sense of increased safety. And this is why small movements can sometimes have a greater impact over time than intense effort. Listening to subtle changes rather than overriding them. Some people call this mindful practices or mindfulness or somatic intelligence. Others call it inner peace. However, peace is not the absence of sensation. It's not numbness and it's not constant calm. Peacefulness is a kind of overall sense of congruency and inner coherence. It's when the body feels like it's a safe place to inhabit, when the sensations feel trustworthy, when effort to do something feels proportionate, when movement feels free and balanced. Even though it changes, it retains a kind of equilibrium as a supported and supportive rather than forced expression. And this is not achieved through control as such. It's something that emerges when the body's allowed to reorganize toward relationship and recognize its innate ability to respond well. Then we can add performance. So we can read about the branches of the nervous system and name them from the anatomy books like a map. And we can even understand the nervous system intellectually, and there's fabulous information about it. We can learn all of its models, all of its frameworks. And that's different from understanding it. And even then, it isn't the only thing that regulates us. It's not our regulator, our controller. The body and its natural processes are not intellectual. Our neurology is exquisitely complex aspect of how it feels its way, our way, into forms, shape-shifting us throughout our day. The nervous system resides in the architecture and it listens first to tissue. It can amplify or it can signal a response, and it responds to how the body feels to itself through the fascia. Then that conversation makes sense. Then regulation follows naturally. I hope that makes sense to you. And if you'd like to explore this quietly, notice your body not as a posture or a position, not as an assessment, but rather as continuity. Notice where support feels present right now. Listen. And if you're really still, listening in and listening out, just as you breathe quietly, present to all that is, you may hear a sound current. Some consider that sound to be the Om, which is actually Aum, the universal sound as it's called. And in some teachings it's considered to be the God chord, a note that nature sings or hums in the background of the background. And apparently when that sound is there, birds sing because it's safe to. I don't know, but perhaps that's why we listen, we go out and we say, oh my God, it was so beautiful, the birds were singing. Not just because it's delightful, but because it means something that resonates safety to us, to our living proprioceptive architecture. The architectural organisation of the fascia matrix is in fact under tension throughout our form. And that means we're effectively strung like a string instrument. Our diaphragms are tensioned like drums. Our breathing tubes and nostrils and throat, with its vocal cords and alar fascia, including its nerves, muscles, tendons and everything, is something like a wind instrument playing the sound of our voice through its pipes and closures. It's a beautiful metaphor which likens the whole body to an orchestra. And I love that because that metaphor makes sense of just how subtle it is to feel harmony or disharmony. Because like any musician, we have to practice to be able to play well over time, adapting and always tuning our instruments. There's a lovely scientific fact that if you have two harps in a room, even many feet apart, and you pluck a particular string on one of the harps, that same string will resonate on the other harp without you touching it. You can't actually prevent that. And in my world, the whole body is like an orchestra. To me, and yes, it is a metaphor, the brain is the composer and the heart is the conductor. And they don't always seem to do well in each other's roles, but that's just the poet in me. When all is well, there is harmony at every level of the orchestra playing. And when there's dissonance, there's tuning to do, or practicing, or somehow something that simply brings us to better coherence and able to play whatever tune or symphony we need to at the time. Is it appropriate? It's a thought, and I hope, if nothing else, it inspires you to appreciate how clever, how complex, how brilliant you already are. Across this whole series, we've been circling one central theme, and that theme is that fascia is not just a connective tissue. The theme is how experience becomes embodied in our architecture, how perception becomes our felt sense, how organisation becomes possible, how sensation becomes a somatic register, and how the nervous system learns when it can rest. Inner peace and resilience are not things we impose on ourselves. They are emergent qualities of a system that feels at ease with itself, supported, coherent, and in relationship with itself. So, throughout this series, we've explored fascia as a bridge, perhaps, or an interface between body and emotion, between sensation and awareness, between energy and form, and now between tissue and nervous system regulation. They integrate. And this is not the end of the conversation. There are other questions waiting about time, about adaptation, about aging, about meaning, about how we live well in bodies that are constantly changing because we're living. That's where we're heading next. And I think you'll really enjoy the terrain. I hope you come with me. And don't forget to subscribe to hear the next series wherever you are. Bless you.